Students, today we are moving to the next lesson, which is after poetry. We have been discussing before the break how to analyze a poem, and we also discussed some of the elements of poetry. So in a kind of sequence, now we are moving to fiction and how to analyze fiction. And in that, we will be taking up the first element of fiction. That first element is called plot. So let's begin with the presentation. You will get to know about other details as we go through the slides. All right, analyzing fiction, plot. So we are aware of what fiction is. We have been at least discussing its basics. You might recall from very initial lectures where we discussed that fiction is a narrative. Okay, to begin with, that much understanding is enough. But of course, we are going to enhance our understanding of what fiction is. So analyzing fiction and elements of fiction. Here are major elements of fiction: plot, character, setting, point of view, symbol, theme. Basically, if you understand each of these elements in fiction, you will be better able to analyze a piece of fiction. As you know, a piece of fiction is a narrative. In other words, a piece of fiction is a story. And one of the most vital elements of a piece of fiction is the plot. Now, technically, plot is sequence of events which take place in a story. Here are a few characteristics of plot. One, plot should be believable, even if it is not realistic. Sometimes students ask this question, whether a story or a narrative is true or not. And my answer to this question is, it doesn't matter whether the story is true or not. What matters is whether the story is believable or not. So when you listen to the story, does it sound believable? If it does, then it is a story. It doesn't have to be realistic, or it doesn't have to be real. But of course, plot is sequence of events. Sometimes the plot of a story is set in such a manner that there is some flashback in the story, which is a character in the story recalls something from her or his past. And that what the character recalls from the past is called flashback. There could also be foreshadowing in a story or in a plot. Foreshadowing is that sometimes characters speak in such a manner or act in such a manner that they give the hint of what is going to happen in future. It is called foreshadowing. We will discuss this more with reference to an example. Graphically, this is how a plot looks like. It begins from an exposition. It has an action which rises to the climax. And then that action falls down in a curve of falling action. And then somewhere over here, we have a denouement. And that is the end of the story. That leads to the end of the story. Now, what does each of these terms mean? Now, exposition is the background information about the story, or the basic information about the story. Exposition is that part of the story where we are told who is who, what are the names of the characters, what is the relationship between them, where are they situated, what do they look like, what are their ages, or what are their major qualities. That is exposition. You might notice in that all that I have just told you, the qualities of the characters, their ages, their relationship with each other, all that is not action. That is just introduction. So exposition is a kind of introduction of the characters, of the setting, of the situation in which characters are placed, of the qualities that those characters exhibit. But then when those characters come in connection with each other, when they interact with each other, that results in some kind of action. Sometimes there could be a conflict between the characters. You can take down this word conflict for yourself. It is very important in in most of narratives. Sometimes there is a conflict between two or more characters or two or more parties. Sometimes there is a clash, very serious clash. But the result of that conflict or that clash is the rising of the action. And we see in the story that action gathers momentum to the point where it reaches its climax. And then the climax is a turning point. That is where maybe one character wins over the other character, or one character defeats the other character, or gets defeated by the other character. And when that happens, then there is a release of energy from the rising action. And that leads to a resolution. So the plot started from a conflict and then it ends on a resolution. Sometimes that resolution could be internal. Sometimes it could be external. Sometimes it could be within a character and sometimes it could be between two or more characters. That resolution is called denouement. And that is the end of the story. So this is a graphic representation of a plot in a story. Without this graphic structure of the story will not have suspense in it. It will not have any attraction in it. People won't read it if it is not made like that. But of course, this is not the final picture and the only picture of a story. Stories vary over this graph. Sometimes the climax reaches too soon, sometimes the climax reaches too late. Sometimes the story ends at climax. Okay, so that depends upon the choice of the short story writer. Okay, now is the time for an example. Okay, I'm going to open up a story and share it with you right now. And we are going to read the story right now to identify these elements in that story, the elements that I have just shared with you. So I'm going to stop sharing this document and share another one with you. I hope you can all see this new handout that I just shared with you. Now I want any one of you to turn on the mic and read from the top from here. Now this is a story by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. The title of the story is One of These Days. So who would like to read? Anybody would like to read?
Sir, may I?
Go ahead, please.
Monday dawned warm and rainless. Aurelio Escobar, a dentist without a degree and a very early riser, opened his office at 6. He took some false teeth, still mounted in their plaster mold, out of the glass case and put on the table a fistful of instruments, which he arranged in size order. As if they were on display, he wore a collarless stripped shirt, closed at the neck with a golden stud and plants held up by suspenders. He was erect and skinny, with a look that rarely corresponded to the situation, the way deaf people have of looking.
Okay.
When he had
Yeah, if you could pause for a minute. So this word over here is pants, okay, and pants held up, okay. But so I know you are reading from screen, so uh, now students, you might notice over here in this very first paragraph, and if you have any disagreement with what I'm going to say, you might point that out. uh, as such, no major action takes place over here, okay. So basically, we get to know about a number of things in this first paragraph. All right. For example, what is the day? What the day looks like, you know, and then it is warm, it is rainless, right? And then what is the character like? He has a name, Aurelio Escobar. His profession is he's a dentist, but doesn't carry a degree, right? And then he is at his clinic, right, because he's arranging all those instruments on his table. And then he is erect, he is skinny, right. uh, so what kind of dress he's wearing? All right. So uh, technically, what would you call this kind of paragraph?
Exposition.
Yes.
Sir,
Yeah,
introductory.
yeah, introductory, but technically we can use the expression exposition for this paragraph. All right. uh, yes, please go ahead to the second paragraph.
When he had things arranged on the table, he pulled the drill toward the dental chair and sat down to polish the false teeth. He seemed not to be thinking about what he was doing, but worked steadily, pumping the drill with his feet even when he didn't need it. After 8, he stopped for a while to look at the sky through the window, and he saw two pensive buzzards who were drying themselves in the sun on the ridgepole of the house next door. He went on working with the idea that before lunch it would rain again. The shrill voice of his 11-year-old son interrupted his concentration. Papa, what? The mayor wants to know if you'll pull his tooth. Tell him I am not here. He was polishing a gold tooth. He held it at arm's length and examined it with his eyes half closed. His son shouted again from the little waiting room. He says you are. He says you are too because he can hear you. The dentist kept examining the tooth only when he had put it on the table. With the finished work, did he say, so much the better. He operated the drill again. He took several pieces of a bridge out of a cardboard box where he kept the things he still had to do and began to polish the gold. Papa, what? He still hadn't changed his expression. He says if you don't take out his tooth, he'll shoot you.
Okay,
With
if you
with
okay, if you could pause over here. Students, now the part that Mubashir had just read until here, could how would you? I mean, we know what is happening. I hope all of you are getting uh, from from the English which is being read out. to us what is taking place over here. Okay, but how would you characterize this part of the story? What is happening over here?
The rising action
Rising.
gradually.
Okay, good. Explain it a little bit more. What do we mean by rising action?
The plotted things are happening one by one.
Okay, we might say that important things are happening one by one. Uh,
The plotted things.
Plotted.
Yes, sir.
Okay, right. So things in the plot are happening one by one. Okay, all right. Any other response?
Events are unfolding.
Very good. Events are unfolding. Good. Yeah. Anything else? Any? Could you use some other expressions to characterize this part? So, so when you say, for example, the action is rising, I pointed out a particular uh, factor which often contributes to the rising of action. What is that factor?
Conflict.
Yes, conflict, right. Conflict or clash. Okay, difference. But yes, exactly, conflict. Okay, so did you notice a rising conflict in this part of the story?
Yes, sir. When he said that he will shoot him if he did not to take out his tooth.
Yeah, true. And that conflict has started much earlier over here. Okay. So, for example, when the son says Papa and dentist replies, What? And then the son says the mayor wants to know if you will pull his tooth. And then the dentist replies, Tell him I'm not here. Okay. So you might notice disagreement right over there. Mayor wants the dentist to do something, but the dentist is avoiding that. So that is the start of the conflict. All right. But then now this conflict is developing. It is kind of becoming more and more potent to the point where we notice that the son tells his father that the mayor says if you don't take out his tooth, he will shoot him, he will kill him. Okay, so yes, so the conflict and the rising of the conflict, of course, that is what is making the action stronger, or that is what is contributing towards rising of the action. Please continue reading.
Without hurrying, with an extremely tranquil movement, he stopped paddling the drill, pushed it away from the chair, and pulled the lower drawer of the table all the way out. There was a revolver. Okay, he said, tell him to come and shoot me. He rolled the chair over opposite the door, his hand resting on the edge of the drawer. The mayor appeared at the door. He had shaved the left side of his face, but the other side, swollen and in pain, had a 5-day-old beard. The dentist saw many nights of dispersion in his dull eyes. He closed the drawer with his fingertips and said softly, Sit down. Good morning, said the mayor. Morning, said the dentist. While the instruments were boiling, the mayor leaned his skull on the headrest of the chair and felt better. His breath was icy. It was a poor office, an old wooden chair, the paddle drill, a glass case with ceramic bottles. Opposite the chair was a window with a shoulder high cloth curtain. When he felt the dentist approach, the the mayor braced his heels and opened his mouth. Aurelio
So
Esco.
students, you must be noticing how the action is rising and it is getting momentum and it is heading towards its climax. Okay, you might identify climax probably at this point or as the story proceeds somewhere else. Okay, but that is one task ahead for you people to notice where probably you will spot the climax in the story. Okay, but you must have noticed how both sides are gaining weight. Okay, so when the dentist said, okay, let the mayor come and kill me, but at the same time he opens up his own drawer, and we can see a revolver over there. Okay, so that means mayor is a stronger man and must have some record of killing people. That is why the dentist trusts what his son tells him, but at the same time the dentist is not going to be threatened because he also is armed. He also carries a revolver, right? But then the mayor is in his office, and now the first interaction takes place between both of them. Okay, so where do we? So you might feel the movement of the narrative towards its climax. Okay, and did you also notice another thing? Okay, let's hold on. I will ask you this question later on. Something in addition to climax, which you must be experiencing while reading the story. So let's read two more paragraphs and then I'll ask you this question again. Please continue.
Aure- Aurelio Escobar turned his head toward the light. After inspecting the infected tooth, he closed the mayor's jaw with a cautious pressure of his fingers. It has to be without anesthesia, he said. Why? Because you have an abscess. The mayor looked him in the eye. All right, he said and tried to smile. The dentist did not return the smile. He brought the basin of sterilized instruments to the work table and took them out of the water with a pair of cold tweezers, still without hurrying. Then he pushed the spittoon with the tip of his shoe and went to wash his hands in the wash basin. He did all this without looking at the mayor, but the mayor didn't take his eyes off him. It was a lower wisdom tooth. The dentist spread his feet and grasped the tooth with the hot forceps. The mayor seized the arms of the chair, braced his feet with all his strength, and felt an icy void in his kidneys, but didn't make a sound. The dentist moved only his wrist without answer, rather with a bitter tenderness. He said, "Now you'll pay for our 20 dead men."
Okay, hold on, hold on,
The ma-
hold on. Okay, so students, I'm sure you are still noticing that the story is heading towards its climax. We don't feel yet that the action has reached its highest point. Okay, uh, I hope you all agree with it. If you disagree, any one of you might point out. But I have another question. Uh, anything else you are experiencing at this time as a reader? In addition to the movement of the action towards its climax, anything else you might be experiencing? My question has just one word response.
Sir, turning point before the climax?
Okay, well, we are heading towards that probably. Okay, turning point is the climax. Okay, that is what we are moving towards. Okay, but in something in addition to that. Okay, let me rephrase my question. Uh, are you curious to know what happens next?
yes,
Okay,
Yes, sir.
okay. Now, what is that curiosity called? What is that
Who
curiosity?
are those, sir? Who
Sir,
are those
inter
20 dead men?
Sir, suspense.
Suspense. Good. So suspense is the word. All right. So this curiosity to know what happens next in the story, that technically is called suspense in the story. Okay, and uh, this is a this is an important characteristic of any narrative or any story. usually when the story is heading towards its climax, there is the rising tension of suspense as well. And in most of the cases, when the story reaches its climax point, that is the highest point of suspense as well. Though usually the suspense continues after that as well. We still want to know how the situation will be resolved after the climax point, right? But suspense, yes, that is the word that I wanted you to take down and keep a note of uh, as an important element of a story. All right. Yes, please continue to read.
The mayor felt the crunch of bones in his jaw and his eyes filled with tears, but he didn't breathe until he felt the tooth come out. Then he saw it through his tears. It seemed so foreign to his pain and that he failed to understand his torture of the 5 previous nights. Bent over the spittoon, sweating, panting, he unbuttoned his tunic and reached for the handkerchief in his pants pocket. The dentist gave him a clean cloth. Dry your tears, he said. The mayor did. He was trembling. While the dentist washed his hands, he saw the crumbling ceiling and a dusty spider web with spiders' egg and dead insects. The dentist returned, drying his hands. Go to bed, he said, and gargle with salt water. The mayor stood up, said goodbye with a casual military salute, and walked toward the door, stretching his legs without buttoning up his tunic. Send the bill, he said, to you or the town. The mayor didn't look at him. He closed the door and said through the screen, it's the same damn thing.
Okay. So now this is the end of the story. All right. Now it is. Where would you pinpoint the climax in the story? Any responses?
when he pulled out his teeth.
Okay. Good. Okay. All right. Well, if we think from the perspective of the intensity of the action, the the intensity of the action, then probably that is where I will spot uh, the climax, because that is where the forces kind of strike with each other. Okay. And we do feel that the person who appeared to be a threat, which is the mayor, actually turns out to be a threatened one, in the sense that he was the one who was at the mercy of the dentist. So if we see from that, I mean, if we imagine both two characters, these two characters to be wrestlers and who are fighting with each other, then the point where the tooth is pulled out, that is the point where one clearly has been defeated by the other. Okay. So that could be a rationalization or justification for spotting this point to be the climax of the story. Okay. I don't think we have any more time, but here is a small assignment. You don't have to write anything, but students, please note down these questions. I can share them in chat box as well. I will email those to you as well. Think of the answers of these questions and share with them with me in the next class verbally. Okay, you don't have to write it down, but reread this story and answer, uh, uh, prepare answers of these questions for the next class.
Sir, do we